Have you ever tried to follow the news on Iran? It can feel like you're trying to solve a puzzle, but someone keeps throwing in pieces from a completely different box. Just when you think you're getting the picture, it all shifts. This is especially true with high-stakes diplomacy, where honestly the mixed signals and confusion almost seem like part of the strategy. Right? You hear about some major peace plan 1 minute, and then the next, you hear it's been totally rejected. And then, out of nowhere, a third, completely different plan just pops up. It's a total fog of information. So how are you supposed to find any clarity when the facts themselves seem to be at war with each other? Okay, let's take a recent example. You've probably seen all the talk about a 10-point peace plan for Iran. It's been all over the news, right? Everyone's debating it, trying to figure out what it means for the future. On the surface, it seems pretty straightforward. There's a proposal on the table. Simple.
But it's not simple. At all. According to U.S. officials who are actually involved in these talks, there isn't just one 10-point plan. Nope, there are at least 3 of them.
Yeah, you heard that right. 3. One version was apparently so out there that officials dismissed it as something that could have been written by ChatGPT. Then there was a second, more reasonable version that was part of some serious back-channel discussions. And then a third, even more extreme plan just appeared on social media out of the blue. This is the kind of noise we have to cut through to find any signal.
All of this confusion really just boils down to one critical question. What is actually happening behind the curtain? Because this isn't just about some document. It's about figuring out who we're really negotiating with in the first place.
And to figure that out, we have to basically hit the reset button on everything we think we know about negotiation. The old playbook, the one you learn in business class or see in the movies, it just doesn't apply here. You have to throw it out the window. We all have this idea of negotiation, right? You find the common ground, that sweet spot in the middle where everybody gives a little, gets a little, and both sides can walk away feeling like they got to win. But that whole idea rests on one huge assumption, that both sides actually want a deal. What happens when one side, or even just a part of one side, doesn't want a deal at all? Well, that's when the game changes completely. So this brings us to a term you might have heard lately, a pause or a ceasefire. Now, a lot of people hear that and immediately think it's a sign of weakness, of surrender. But in this new kind of negotiation, it's actually a really powerful strategic tool. It's about creating space. You heat things up right to the brink, and then you suddenly cool them way down. It gives everyone an exit ramp, sure, but more importantly, it lets you see what the other side does with that new breathing room. And this is where we get to the absolute heart of the matter. The whole reason a strategic pause is so important here is because the West isn't negotiating with one unified opponent. We have to understand who is really sitting on the other side of that table. This is the key. The whole thing hinges on this one idea. Iran is not a monolith. It's a system at war with itself. It's made up of at least 2 major factions that have completely different goals, totally different worldviews. And if you don't get that internal conflict, you're going to misread every single move they make. Let's break this down because it's fascinating. On one side, you've got the survivalists. Think of this as the political regime. These are the guys worried about practical stuff, keeping the lights on, keeping control, and at the end of the day, making sure they survive. They operate on a logic that we can at least understand. But then you have the chaos agents. These are elements tied to the IRGC, and their worldview isn't about quarterly results or stability. It's about a quasi-religious, apocalyptic vision of, and I'm quoting here, washing the world with blood. You can't really make a deal with that. Imagine this. You're in a boardroom trying to close a massive deal. You're making progress with half the people at the table, the ones who want to sell. But the other half, they're not even in the room. They're down in the basement with gasoline and matches, actively trying to set the building on fire. That's the paradox of trying to negotiate with Iran right now. So what do? I mean, if you can't negotiate with the country as a whole, you have to change your entire strategy. You stop trying to negotiate with the country, and you start negotiating with the fracture, that crack running right between those 2 factions. And that strategy becomes this kind of 4-step probe. First, you engage the survivalists, you keep them talking with a mix of hope and fear. At the exact same time, you make it crystal clear that any move by the chaos agents will be met with an absolutely devastating response. Then, step 3, you introduce the pause. You create this window. And finally, step 4, you just watch. You watch very, very closely to see who acts. Do you see restraint or do you see more aggression? So, and this is so important to get, the pause isn't a surrender. It's not a concession. It's a diagnostic tool. It's a test designed to answer one single question. Which of these 2 factions is actually calling the shots?
If restraint fills that window of opportunity, you know you have someone to talk to. If missiles fill that window, well, you've learned something else entirely.
Getting this right isn't just about good policy today. It's a matter of massive historical importance. Misreading the fundamental nature of your adversary, that can lead to absolute catastrophe. History's just littered with examples. Just think about Neville Chamberlain in 1938. He went to Munich thinking he was negotiating with a rational guy, Adolf Hitler, who just wanted some specific territory. He completely, tragically misread a movement that literally fed on expansion itself. The result was a disaster. Now, contrast that with the Cold War. The Soviet Union also had this grand revolutionary ideology, but underneath it all, they wanted to survive. And that one crucial desire for survival is why deals could be made, and why they held. And that was all possible because of a simple, terrifying concept: mutually assured destruction, or MAD. Both the US and the Soviets knew without a doubt that pushing the button would mean their own total annihilation. That shared fear of destruction created a red line that neither side was willing to cross, and that's what made real negotiation possible. And that brings us right back to today's crisis. It all boils down to two possible realities, two endgames. If the survivalists, the faction that wants to live to see another day, if they're in control, then this strategy of pressure and pauses can actually work. But if the chaos agents are the ones in control, then every pause is just a trick. It's an opportunity for them to regroup, rearm, and advance their destructive goals. So the entire game, everything you see in the headlines, the mixed signals, the rockets, the talk of peace, it is all ultimately part of an effort to answer this one fundamental question. Are we dealing with an adversary that, like the Soviet Union, fundamentally fears its own destruction? Or are we dealing with one that, like the movement Chamberlain faced, might actually welcome it? Answering that question, that isn't just the key to a negotiation. It's the key to everything that comes next. The choice isn't just about policy. It's about understanding the core motivation of the entire system we're facing. Is it a desire for survival or a desire for destruction?